For 2 long nights, she had nowhere to sleep. No family, no money, no hope. Wrapped in a thin, worn shawl, the young woman quietly rested on the porch of an empty ranch house, determined to leave before sunrise rather than burden a stranger. She could have stolen food, but she chose hunger. She could have begged, but she chose dignity. Then, just as the sun dipped behind the mountains, a lonely rancher rode home and found the exhausted stranger asleep on his porch. Most people would have chased her away. Instead, he asked one simple question that changed both of their lives forever. Have you eaten? What happened after that became a story of kindness, courage, and second chances that no one in the valley ever forgot. Stay with me until the very end, because the rancher's final gift will leave you in tears. Emily Harper was only 23 years old, but hardship had aged her beyond her years. Once the daughter of honest settlers, she had dreamed of becoming a schoolteacher. Those dreams disappeared when sickness claimed both of her parents within the same winter. The small farm they had struggled to build was taken to settle debts, leaving Emily alone with nothing but a faded blue dress, a worn leather suitcase, and the courage to keep walking. For weeks she wandered from one frontier town to another searching for work. Every ranch already had enough hands. Every boarding house demanded money she didn't have. Some offered work that would have cost her dignity, and Emily quietly walked away every time. Hunger became a familiar companion, but she refused to steal even a single loaf of bread. After spending one freezing night beneath an abandoned wagon, she continued west, believing somewhere there had to be honest people. The second night was even colder. She wrapped her thin shawl tightly around herself beneath an old cottonwood tree and whispered a prayer she had spoken countless times. Lord, I don't need riches, just one chance. A morning brought only more empty roads. By sunset she reached a peaceful ranch surrounded by golden fields and weathered fences. Smoke no longer rose from the chimney, and everything appeared quiet. Thinking no one was home, Emily carefully climbed onto the wooden porch. She placed her battered suitcase beside the rocking chair and promised herself she would leave before dawn. She wanted only one safe place to close her eyes. Exhaustion quickly overcame her. As she slept, the sound of steady hoofbeats echoed across the valley. Daniel Brooks, a respected rancher known throughout the county for his honesty rather than his wealth, returned home after delivering cattle to a nearby town. He noticed the unfamiliar suitcase before he noticed the sleeping young woman curled against the porch wall. He quietly tied his horse to the fence. For a long moment he simply watched. Her clothes were torn. Her boots were nearly worn through. Even in sleep she looked frightened, as though expecting someone to chase her away. Daniel understood hardship. Years earlier he had buried his wife after a terrible fever. Since then, loneliness had become his closest companion. Instead of waking Emily with anger, he gently placed his coat over her shoulders to protect her from the evening chill. Only then did she slowly open her eyes. The moment she realized someone stood before her, she quickly rose to leave. I'm sorry, she whispered nervously. I wasn't stealing, I just needed somewhere safe for one night. Daniel looked at her tired face. Then he quietly asked, Have you eaten today? Emily tried to answer. Instead, tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Emily quickly wiped away her tears, embarrassed that a stranger had seen her cry. I'll leave right now, she said softly. I never meant to cause trouble. Daniel shook his head. I didn't ask you to leave. He opened the front door of the ranch house and simply said, Come inside. Supper is ready. Emily hesitated. She had learned that kindness often came with hidden expectations. But there was something calm and sincere in Daniel's voice that made her believe she was finally safe. Inside, the ranch house was warm with the glow of a crackling fireplace. Daniel placed a bowl of hot stew, fresh bread, and warm coffee on the table. Eat first, he said. We can talk afterward. Emily hadn't tasted a proper meal in days. She ate slowly, trying not to appear desperate, while Daniel quietly gave her space. When she finally finished, she whispered, Thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Daniel smiled gently. You don't owe me anything. Emily lowered her eyes. I do. I don't want charity. If you'll let me stay for a little while, I'll work. I'll cook, clean, wash clothes, anything honest. Daniel nodded without hesitation. I've been needing someone to help around the ranch. Honest work deserves honest pay. Emily looked up in surprise. You mean, you'd hire me? I wouldn't have offered if I didn't mean it. For the first time in weeks, hope returned to her heart. The next morning, Emily woke before sunrise. She cleaned the ranch house, prepared breakfast for the ranch hands, mended torn blankets, and organized the kitchen. She worked with quiet determination, never complaining, grateful for every opportunity. The ranch workers quickly noticed her kindness. She greeted everyone with respect, helped wherever she could, and treated every task as if it mattered. Before long, the lonely ranch felt warmer than it had in years. One evening, Daniel handed her a small cloth pouch. Inside were silver coins, her first week's wages. Emily stared at them in disbelief. No one has ever paid me this fairly, she whispered. Daniel answered with a gentle smile. You earned every coin. That night, standing on the porch where she had once fallen asleep with nothing but fear, Emily looked across the peaceful fields, glowing beneath the setting sun. Only 2 nights earlier, she had believed her life was over. Now she had honest work, a warm bed, and people who treated her with respect instead of pity. For the first time in a very long while, she wasn't simply surviving, she was beginning to live. A full year passed, and the ranch had changed in ways Daniel never expected. What had once been a quiet, lonely home was now filled with warmth, laughter, and purpose. Emily had become the heart of the household. She cared for the ranch as though it were her own, prepared meals for the workers, kept every room spotless, and welcomed every visitor with kindness. The ranch hands respected her not because Daniel had hired her, but because she treated every person with dignity, whether they were wealthy cattle buyers or tired stable boys. As winter approached, an early snowstorm struck the valley harder than anyone had imagined. Roads disappeared beneath deep snow, supply wagons became trapped, and several poor families in the nearby town ran dangerously low on food. While many people locked their doors to protect what little they had, Emily quietly began filling sacks with flour, beans, dried meat, blankets, and firewood. Daniel noticed what she was doing. If we give away this much, he said gently, our own supplies will be tight. Emily smiled softly. I know what it feels like to spend 2 nights without hope. I can't let someone else feel that way if we can help. Daniel didn't argue. Instead, he hitched the wagon himself. Together they traveled through the snow, delivering food and blankets to widows, elderly couples, and hungry children. Emily never asked for thanks. She simply smiled, offered encouragement, and reminded every family that difficult seasons never lasted forever. Word of their kindness spread quickly across the valley. Soon the townspeople realized something remarkable. The young woman many would have ignored months earlier had become the very person holding the community together during its hardest winter. When spring finally arrived, the town gathered for its annual harvest celebration. The mayor stood before the crowd and thanked Daniel for helping so many families. But an elderly widow gently interrupted. No, she said, we should thank the young woman beside him. Others nodded in agreement. She brought food when we had none. She stayed with my sick husband through the night. She never wanted praise. She only wanted people to have hope. Emily lowered her eyes, embarrassed by the attention. Daniel looked at her with quiet admiration. From the day he had found her asleep on his porch, he had seen strength hidden beneath her exhaustion. Now everyone else finally saw it too. That evening, as the golden sunset spread across the peaceful ranch, Daniel invited Emily to sit on the same porch where they had first met. For a long moment they watched the horses grazing peacefully. Then Daniel smiled. Do you remember what you told me the first night? Emily laughed softly through misty eyes. I said I wasn't stealing. I only needed somewhere safe to sleep. Daniel nodded. You asked for 1 night. He paused before continuing. But somewhere along the way, this place became home because of you. Emily felt tears gathering in her eyes. Daniel reached into his pocket and handed her a folded document. She carefully opened it. It was ownership papers giving her a share in the ranch. Emily looked at him in disbelief. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. Daniel replied gently. This ranch is better because you are here. You earned every bit of it." Before she could answer, Daniel took one slow breath. "I helped you because it was the right thing to do. But over time, I realized something." He smiled warmly. "I don't want to imagine another sunset without you beside me." His voice became softer. "Emily, would you honor me by becoming my wife?" Well, for a moment, Emily couldn't speak. Only a year earlier, she had believed no one in the world cared whether she lived or died. Now someone was offering not pity, but love. Not charity, but partnership. With tears streaming down her face, she placed her hand in Daniel's. "Yes," she whispered, "I'd be honored." The months later, the entire valley gathered beneath a bright blue western sky to celebrate their wedding. The ranch that had once been a lonely place became a home filled with laughter, kindness, and new beginnings. People often asked Daniel why he had trusted a stranger sleeping on his porch. He always gave the same answer. Sometimes the greatest blessing arrives when someone simply needs a place to rest. And Emily never forgot the lesson that changed her life forever. One act of kindness, offered without judgment, can turn 2 hopeless nights into a lifetime of hope. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes kindness is the greatest strength of all.